Hey Facebook,
Hi, good morning.
we are live. Sometimes people call us, what do they call us?
The sex
The
docs.
Sex Docs. Here we are, episode 12. We're going to talk a little bit about testosterone today. Let you know though, here we are at the JW Marriott. We just got done having this wonderful planning meeting with our office manager Trisha Reed, and just a quick shout out to Trisha. We really couldn't do what we do without you, and thank you for that. And we always do this about once a quarter. We come normally here, maybe sometimes the Westin, and sit and just plan and just imagine and think what we can do to continue to expand what we do for our patients.
Yeah.
And I think we came up with some good ideas.
Oh, we did indeed, yeah.
Yeah, there was one, I really love your sunglasses.
Thanks, babe.
Do you think everybody really knows it's you? I mean, with the sunglasses, maybe they're not sure.
So.
See, it's really her. It is really her. So you're incognito.
I am, thank you.
So okay.
What did we plan? We planned a lot of really cool stuff, but we wanted to mention our IV menu of services, right? What we want to say about that is that we're always staying cutting edge for you. We're always looking at where we can fill holes of deficiency if we're not meeting your needs to the level that we think we should be meeting them. And what we're really excited to say is that it is true that our patient base is truly expanding, not just from those that are in a state of dis-ease, but to really include a lot of patients that are striving for optimal health, right?
Yeah.
So with that, we are bringing a whole new menu of IV, intravenous nutritional therapy. You want to say a little bit about that?
Well, we've kind of found a really good company. Again, we're constantly looking for the best way to go about bringing these services, making sure it's the best possible product. And I think we've found a pretty good company that we're looking into, and being able to kind of bring that all together to bring the best cutting edge medical information for you and solutions for you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of patients really were asking about more things for IVs, and we've done IVs for years. And I think now we've got some additional concepts. We've got a sports IV. We have a rise and shine, post alcohol, if that applies. That type of IV, immune stimulating, which we've done a lot of things with that. This is a little bit more intricate. So really a lot of really cool things and other things that are coming with the IV program. So look out for that.
Yes, indeed.
What else did we want to talk about today before that?
Well, we're entering the end of the year, if you can believe it, even though for most of us we're just thinking about starting off that school year for the littles or for ourselves. But we always want to think ahead. So as the holiday approaches, we want to remind you that there is nothing like the gift of health and healing for yourself and for your loved ones. So please do reach out. We have many patients who have considerately thought of their loved ones and given gift certificates to come spend time with us, or for IV therapies, or of course for all of the injection therapies that we do to help noticeably, naturally enhance your aesthetics.
Yeah, and I wanted to say too, one of the things that we're also offering that might help with that loved one that might be thinking about coming to see us and what it is that we do, you can now come and see us for just about 20 minutes as a new patient.
Yeah.
So it's a very minimal obligation. You don't have to get lab work initially, which sometimes that kind of slows the process down. Eventually you have to get those kind of things, but it's just that first initial meeting that can be done really quick in 15 to 20 minutes. And it just kind of gets that opportunity to break the ice and really realize that we do offer a lot of the things that people want and need.
Yeah.
So this is an option for those friends and family that might be a little bit on the edge about whether or not they want to make that decision. This makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
So something to consider too, right?
Definitely.
And it's been very successful.
Yeah. I think you've gotten a really good impression by listening to our videos, and for those of you who have already worked with us, to understand that there's nothing easy about doing what you do. There's nothing easy about making the decision, choice by choice, to live your life in a health-focused way and to strive for an optimum level. So when you're making the investment of time, energy to meet with a doctor, we want to make sure that we're the right fit for you, and that of course that you're the right fit for us. Part of why we're so successful at what we do is because we really do have the opportunity to say, yes, you're a patient I want to work with because I'm inspired by your story.
Right.
So I think that these 20-minute visits really give people an opportunity to dip their toes in the water and say, yep, I'm willing to take this challenge.
Sure, and it also allows us to be even more medically accurate on whether or not we can meet your needs.
Yeah.
I think in many cases we can, maybe sometimes we can't, but we give those appropriate referrals to where you're getting the exact medical needs that you need.
Yeah.
So today we wanted to talk a little bit more about testosterone. So last week we said we just got back from England and from the presentation that I had given in London, specifically about the decline of testosterone in sperm in men globally. And so we wanted to talk more about what we do regarding that. But I think maybe at this point we can maybe go through some of these, a few of these slides and kind of talk a little bit about that. One of the things that we talked about last week was I had a few slides that were talking about the who, the what, and sort of the how someone becomes a true testosterone male. And it's several things, and it was a lot of the points that I brought up in the presentation that we could kind of briefly go through right now. So as far as what makes a testosterone male, first of all, he's got great muscle and bone mass. One of the great things about testosterone, it returns and restores muscle and bone for men. Optimal cardiovascular functioning. They're certainly sexually functioning, peak from a peak standpoint. So erections are there. They actually feel like it, or from a libido standpoint. What are some of the other
sex
things? It applies. What else? Well, certainly optimal sperm. And that was one of the big things that we see this decline over the past three generations in the quality and the amounts of sperm. Really, about since the early 1900s, we're starting to see this decline.
Yeah. So what's great about focusing here first on just the what makes a testosterone male is that it gives you a good scope of how many different demographics we're touching on here. When you think about age, people wonder, well, how do I know? Men wonder, and then perhaps their partners wonder, how do I know if you're at the right age to explore what your testosterone is? Are you a true testosterone male? And what I think we would say to that is, really at any age, it's a good idea to get tested, because if you're young enough that you are not a candidate for hormone replacement therapy, then it's a wonderful age to assess, first of all, a good baseline, right? A baseline, because if your baseline is 800 and then 5 years later you drop down to 400, your labs are in the range of normal, but clearly that's a drastic drop for a young, healthy male. So it establishes baseline, but it also really helps practice prevention. Because you've talked a little bit about the fact that testosterone should be optimized not just through hormone replacement, but for lifestyle changes and botanical support and diet, exercise, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways of going about it. We certainly look at hormone replacement there, and we'll get to that in a second. But there are multiple ways to do it. What we're looking for is men to be what we call androgenic, which is another fancy way of just saying that all the things that make a man, physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, are all there optimized. And that can be done through testosterone, but it can be done through many other things. So what are some other things? Well, they're certainly going to have a low body fat percentage, because that's one of the great things that testosterone does. It decreases body fat. It maintains metabolism in a huge way. And it's also, I think one of the biggest things about what makes a testosterone male, he's emotionally stable. And I think one of the, it really is, it's one of the biggest misconceptions that testosterone is simply about guys being irritable and being sort of violent. And what we've seen with a lot of behavioral endocrinology and the research that's coming out, particularly in the past decade, that it's really, really refuting a lot of that, and it's challenging that concept, that in fact it's really quite the opposite. That the lower testosterone goes, the more aggressive guys get, the more irritable they get.
And more warring.
Right, exactly.
Conflict-oriented.
Right. Doesn't mean that guys don't want to have a certain level of risk-taking and certainly a level of assertiveness, and that assertiveness comes from testosterone for sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it translates into aggression. What else? So, how's the testosterone male? I think what this question is about, well, how do we get there?
How do we get there?
We kind of know what it is or what he is. How do we how do we get there? So one of the key things is, and this is something I'm really passionate about, he lifts heavy things, which means that one of the best ways to stimulate testosterone and stimulate growth hormone is to simply just lift heavy things off of the ground. So weight training has a lot to do with just stimulating testosterone and maintaining it for men at any age.
And carrying children. I mean, I know this
I've done a lot of that.
I know this always sounds like my silly inserts, but the reality is that how many times have my girlfriends and I or other women seen a man with a baby on his shoulder and maybe one on his hip and one in a stroller, and we think, oh, how cute. There's nothing sweeter than a man carrying his children around, and it is so true.
You say that to me all the time.
It's true.
Like the easiest thing for me to do is I just pick up the kids, and she's liking that.
And I'm like, so So lift heavy things.
Yes, and your kids whenever you can. Limited toxins. One of the things that people say, well, why is it? Why are we seeing lowering testosterone? Why are we seeing lowering sperm? It has a lot to do with, unfortunately, the air we're breathing and the water we're drinking, the foods we're eating are laden with toxins that are literally interfering with the ability to make testosterone at the testicular level, affecting sperm count and morphology, and certainly even affecting things like testicular cancer.
Yeah.
So all these things are on the rise, and in part, it might be because of these toxins.
So this is one of the things that I've noticed. Now, obviously, the city of Phoenix, which I still lovingly call a town, but the city of Phoenix is ever growing. It's growing quite quickly. But when you compare it to the cities of the Northeast, where I grew up and was trained, I saw so many patients out there that were younger and younger than my patients out here, and they had a lot of the symptoms of hormone deficiency and hormone imbalance, and definitely toxicity. The closer you get to the nucleus of a city, the more you see acne and allergies and lethargy and mood disorders like depression or anxiety. The further away you get from the center of the cities, the less you see of that. Definitely that has been clearly correlated to the fact that when you're in more urban environments, aside from many other variables, but one of them for sure is the toxicity that you see from just having industrial waste. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone should run away from the city. What it means is that at a very young age, when you're developing these testosterone males and females, but when you're developing these testosterone males, take them out to the country, take them out to the ocean, travel, see this beautiful world, and give them an opportunity to not always be in the middle of these toxin centers.
Yeah, I agree. It's a big, big part of it. So what else? How do we get there? One of the things is to make sure we're maintaining men with levels of testosterone at least above about 600-700, upwards of around 1100. So getting your levels checked and knowing where you stand has a lot to do with being able to maintain that. If it's low, then we bring this up. This is how we continue to build that testosterone male. He's definitely sexually active. Not just what he is, but how he is. Meaning, if you're sexually active, this creates the testosterone male. It creates the need and the demand for testosterone. So a lot of times it's just simply, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
And how do you become more sexual? Have sex. I mean, that's at least one first start. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't feel like it, or maybe there's erectile dysfunction, or just simply the libido's not there. So a lot of times what we're doing is creating a spark for the patient through some of the strategies that we're applying. But in the end, they got to take that and they got to do something with it. And that would be through the sexual act. And the more they're doing that, the more they're enhancing what's going on with the testosterone. And, another thing is how people are eating. One of the things that we promote is an ancestral diet. It's maybe another way of saying paleo. It's certainly based on the work of Weston Price. So this idea of eating the way our ancestors used to eat, which really means tends to be a little bit more low grains.
Low grain, for sure.
It tends to be certainly higher amounts of fat, moderate amounts of protein. And this increases testosterone. It gives the building blocks.
Right,
that is the building blocks.
That's the issue,
for that. So, and I think that's been something that's worked for both of us personally too.
Maybe this is a good time to just insert really quickly the Sun Fair.
Oh yeah, Sun Fair, absolutely. So huge, massive, at least at this point, a massive shout out to Sun Fair.
John Stewart.
Yes, John Stewart, the CEO of Sun Fair. We've met with him a couple of times, and we're both eating the food. It's just fantastic. This is a food service that is available in both the Valley as well as in the LA area, and they've been around since 1997. And we have looked into a lot of different things, not just for ourselves personally, but in a large part for our patients, to be able to give this option to our patients about how they should be able to eat that might be a little bit more convenient without it being fast food. And this is, the food is fantastic.
Yeah,
it looks great. It tastes great.
It's as close, I would say it's as close to having a personal chef on a regular basis as we can get.
Yeah.
But anyways, not to dwell too much on there, just really to say that there are options,
Yes.
and if you feel like you can't find one, then please, of course, reach out with questions, and we'll be happy to help match you up.
And we can certainly talk more about Sun Fair if you decide to give us a call, or
Yep.
any of our patients that are watching now. So, and one other thing, how do we make the testosterone male? This is one of the things that I find the most intriguing. It's really, really cool. It's something, I don't know, it's almost like a personal thing for me, but how do you make a testosterone male? It's through the testosterone woman. And what we mean by that is the higher the levels of the testosterone in the female, when you're in about the second trimester, this will dictate the levels of testosterone for the male fetus and his sensitivity to testosterone, not only his levels, but also how he will respond to testosterone in the future. It's pretty cool. So how do we make a testosterone male with a testosterone woman?
Yeah, which we talked a little bit about last week, but perhaps we can touch on that either next week or one of the upcoming weeks and talk more about the testosterone female. I think it's always wonderful for us to focus on the effects of estrogen on the male, because those aren't places that people usually go to in their thought processes, and the flip of that as well. You've heard us talk about testosterone and its effects on the female. We definitely, as women, need healthy levels of testosterone well past menopause.
You are absolutely right. It's one of the key things. In fact, women have more testosterone than they do estrogen. We've talked about that in past videos. So finally, who is the testosterone male? So what was that?
Yeah, you are a testosterone male.
Oh, me? I thought you were pointing to someone. We've got a couple people who just joined.
We got a couple of happy faces there. So thank you.
I'd like to think I'm a testosterone male. I certainly strive for that from a complete standpoint of what that really means, particularly through the research that I did, that we both did for this presentation that is gave. And so I think it's an ideal, as well as just simply talking about some testosterone replacement.
It's a choice. I mean, this is a lot of what we talk about at the Hormone Zone, and definitely as a sex docs, that this is a choice. You're going to always be given the ingredients that you were granted through genetics and, you know, from my perspective, through God, but you choose what you do with that.
Yeah.
So what makes a testosterone man? What are some of those choices?
Well, first of all, who is he? He's definitely integrated. That means that from a mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint, there's a full integration that's going on. It's not just simply physical, but he is definitely physically strong. He's lifting those heavy things. He's going to present that way. He's going to be confident and assertive, and again, that goes back to this idea of what testosterone is doing to the psyche. It's helping with assertiveness, not necessarily aggression. It's helping with assertiveness to solve problems and issues. It's one of the things that men tend to want to do out there in the world. Women do this as well.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that maybe is a little bit more unique to men. There's certainly a level of confidence that men will portray when there's a certain amount of testosterone.
Yeah.
And with the confidence comes actually less aggression.
And I think also, I always like to say that there's a big difference between sparring and fighting. Verbal sparring, for example, whether it's between you and your partner. I know that for John and myself, as many of you know, we met in school, and definitely the embers were thoroughly stoked. Is that how you say you stoked the embers? We're thoroughly stoked through the verbal sparring. I mean, there was such a wonderful stimulation for us just by having the ability to argue our perspectives and through that find common ground. Well, that's the same thing men do with each other. They can spar physically and verbally, and that's a response of confidence and assertiveness versus respect versus just wanting to be domineering or dominating.
For sure. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I fell in love with Christina, one of the million reasons, but certainly she could argue better than anyone that I had ever met. And she could just hold her own, it doesn't matter, and I can get like kind of crazy with my ideas, and we'd always were able to kind of verbally spar back and forth, and with a level of respect and mutual sort of understanding, and and she kicks my butt all the time too.
Every rare once in a while, he lets himself acknowledge that I was right.
Every once in a while. So what else? He's a calculated risk taker. We were talking about that before. You know, I don't know if I mentioned this last week or with Facebook, but I had mentioned this to you. There was an interesting article I was reading about a cave that they had discovered, and this cave it had this real huge drop, and they hadn't seen it for hundreds of years, but apparently people had found it before, because at the bottom of this huge drop were a bunch of skeletons that were primarily pretty much all male skeletons, but they were particularly young male skeletons. And the idea behind that was that the risks that were taken to explore this were done by young males with, you know, testosterone through the roof. So risk taking that often can cause calamity. It also brings us a lot of the successes and wonderful things that we have in this world, and sometimes calculated risk has to be there.
Yeah.
The other thing is that he's definitely pro-social. So I think you've been kind of getting this understanding that there is a pro-social nature to the testosterone male. He's not anti-social, it's quite the opposite.
He's pro-social in the sense that I think there's a strong sense of responsibility,
yes,
and a tendency to care for the tribe and, you know, the extended world, yes, around them. I think that's what we mean very much by pro-social.
For sure, and he's also, higher testosterone males are more likely to get married. So we would think it would be the other way around. High testosterone wants to just go spread the seed, so to speak, and it's not necessarily the case. Higher level testosterone actually makes men want to find that one singular mate and that partner and stick with them. He's also very self-reliant, and then ultimately he's free. And this was one big thing that I really love being able to present in London, was this idea of freedom. It's something that's very personal to me and to us as a family, and it's just about this great country. So the testosterone male, I believe, is important for that concept. So that's a little bit about the what and the how and the who of the testosterone male. So if you're thinking maybe testosterone levels are low, what can you do about it? What could you do about it here at the Hormone Zone? So we have several things, but I'd say probably the two main things that we focus on. First of all is a proper assessment, going through things in great medical detail, a lot of lab work. We're going to look at testosterone levels, we're going to look at estrogen levels. But one of the things we focus on from a therapy standpoint, if we're finding that diet, exercise, and particularly herbal and nutritional things are not really working. That's still going. I got a phone call there. I should have turned that off. Anyway, so one of the things we focus on are hormone pellets. Small little pellets that we can place very simply underneath the skin, and they bring up the testosterone levels and they maintain them consistently over time. It's a pretty awesome way to do testosterone or even regular hormone replacement therapy for women.
So this is a non-invasive procedure. It's still considered minor surgery, so you want to be respectful of your insertion sites, but it's minor surgery and the downtime is basically none.
Well, not a huge downtime, but there is a little bit of restriction in exercise for about a week.
But there's no downtime. You can come in on your lunch break and have it done and go right back to work.
Absolutely.
But the restrictions would be that you don't want those pellets to pop back out.
Yeah.
So you have to monitor your physical activity, and you want to make sure you're not immersing yourself in water like a bathtub or a pool. But other than that, super easy.
It's pretty simple. It takes about 5 minutes. Again, it can last up to 6 months.
Yeah.
So for a lot of men, they enjoy that particular option because it's just set it and forget it. It's there for you at all times. Someone was just waving there.
Compliance is 100% when you don't have to remember to take something. I'm always a big fan of that.
That's a big thing. And anything with medicine, we know as physicians that compliance is a big part of it. So yeah, you get that with pellets. But again, there's some downtime, and maybe I got athletes that don't want to take 7 days off from exercise, so maybe that's not the best way to go about it. One of the other options that we offer are testosterone injections. And I think there's been a lot of misconception about testosterone injections, even misconceptions that I held for several years earlier in my career. But what we've learned is that it is extremely safe, extremely effective,
easy.
Very easy, but particularly the way we've learned to do it for our patients. So typically testosterone injections can give you a big spike up and a big drop down based on sometimes once a week or as infrequently as once a month.
One time a month.
The way it's done is a ridiculous way to give testosterone injections, and so men never feel really optimal with that.
So one of the things that John's going to talk about is, for a moment, let's go back to pellets. What we like about the pellets is the fact that they are giving you that really nice, steady release of hormone, right?
Very consistent.
So what we do at the Hormone Zone is we try to mimic that as much as possible through injections.
Yes.
So what are the techniques that we're using for that?
Well, first of all, we're taking what is maybe sometimes a typical one-time-a-week injection, splitting that dose in half, and delivering that twice a week. So instead, we're minimizing the peak and the valley. Yes. The other thing is that we're doing a subcutaneous injection. Most doctors are not employing this method. It might be that in the future they will do this more. But when you place the testosterone in the subcutaneous fat, let's say in the stomach, with a small little needle, this winds up going into the fat instead of the muscle. So typically testosterone injections are done with an intramuscular injection. This would be a subcutaneous right into the fat type of injection. When it's put into the fat, it maintains the levels that much more. There's a slower release, slower dissolution rate, and so we're therefore also keeping the levels more consistent. So we had gone through, as we started doing this several years back, and we went through a process of really looking at a lot of labs consistently. We were making guys go back left and right to just really get the data.
That's right.
And now we're very convinced that it's extremely consistent throughout the week, and we don't get those big ups and downs at all.
And what about downtime with injections?
Zero. You know, you're going to hit that thing and go and run a marathon, do whatever it is that you want to do. Right after that injection, there is no downtime. Now,
including enjoy the pools behind us.
Exactly. You can just go jump right in. So that's the convenient side. Perhaps the inconvenient side, depending on the patient, might be that he's got to give himself an injection 2 times a week.
2 times a week.
But it is self-administered. Again, very simple, small little needle, really simple.
Make sure that you get taught, though, how to do that.
Yes, and of course, at the Hormone Zone, we go through that painstakingly and show you exactly how to do it, what the best ways are. We've learned from, things over the years on the best way to do it. So not rocket science, but it's definitely got an art to it as well.
That's a good segue then.
You think?
Into...
The artisans of sex? So I think we got a lot into the science, and kind of maybe even touched a little bit on the art. But what more did you want to say about the art of testosterone?
Well, as I always say, with a big smile, this is my favorite part, because this is the part that helps make almost like an olive branch to the world out there that is not already dedicated to their health. Here's an easy way for women to help extend that olive branch to their males. It's the art of communication. It's a very important realization that John and I have had, where we have about 50% male population, but out of that 50%, the significant majority is there because their partners brought them in. We've said that before. And I always say, well, kudos to you for those partners that were able to delicately and respectfully approach their male partner to say, I think we can do better. So what I would leave us today with is the notion that the art of questioning your partner's testosterone levels can sometimes come off as a challenge of their maleness, of their manlyhood. And this is a really difficult thing for men to hear, and a very difficult for women to feel that they're inflicting on. So reach out to us for sure. We're experts in doing this, and please invite your partners to attend your visits. Let them have an opportunity to understand that the effects of testosterone are for body, mind, spirit, etc., and that men deserve that same respect to have their hormones looked at as women do. As a reminder, men go through andropause as women go through menopause. They just don't usually have the luxury of complaining about it.
Right. And we're always open to listen. Our office manager put something on my desk. It was a testimonial from a patient just the other day. And in this particular case, it was about me. And he had, among some other things, one of the things that he said that stuck out so much to me was that he said, Dr. Robinson's really funny, which, Christina sometimes says I'm not that funny. But anyway, this guy kind of thought it was funny. One of the main
top 3.
It's not my top 3.
That's all I say.
But she did say, or this guy did say, that I kept it light. And I think that's certainly something that we bring for whether it's men or women. We're keeping it light, we're keeping it respectful within that lightness, and we're keeping it within the realm of a medical perspective. But it doesn't have to be so serious. And if you keep it light, I think that helps to attract people to make those decisions about their health and take their health to that next level and be a little bit more open, maybe about talking some of these more, intimate and personal things. So we're here for you.
You're not alone.
You're definitely not alone with the amount of patients that we've seen over the years. You're not alone. It's something that a lot of people deal with, and there's a lot of great solutions. So, well, here's definitely what we know for sure.
Hormones are sexy.
Facebook is sexy. You're sexy. Testosterone is sexy. The testosterone male is really freaking sexy. I don't know. What are we going to talk about next week?
I think that we had a few things on our list, so we welcome feedback, but maybe we'll jump into the testosterone female. It'll be a nice balance.
I think that would be. Okay. So next week, let's talk about the testosterone female and how important that is for the women in your life, gentlemen out there. And
until then, thank you and have a beautiful week.
Bye.